Hi everyone, I hope you're fine and safe. I'm Oriana, a senior English literature student. Today we're going to talk about one of the most beautiful pieces of literature by an Italian author, Oriana Fallaci. Let's get started. Well, about the author. Fallaci was born in Florence, Italy on 29 June 1929. She entered the medical school studies with her parents' persuasion, actually, but after a while she finds out that this is not her true calling, hence she abandons. And that can be counted as her first starting point to step in a spectacular path, changing thousands of people's minds. Well, her political interviews were the matter of gaining mere attentions worldwide. Surprisingly, she even had interesting meetings and interviews with Shah, Saddam, Gaddafi, and unbelievably, she removed the hijab or chador forced on her during an interview with Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. In addition to criticizing the imposed compulsion of wearing it, she actually wrote it in 1975. Another thing about her amazing life is war. She has always been in the middle of wars. That's why always a smooth trace of war, or at least its consequences, can easily be seen in her works. And several years afterward, she wrote into a world that in war, you really got a chance sometime, but there we had none. The wall they put us against was a place of execution. If you moved, the police would execute you. If you didn't move, the soldiers would kill you. And for many nights afterward, I was to have this nightmare, the nightmare of scorpions surrounded by fire, unable even to try to jump through the fire, because if it did so, it would be pierced through. After all, she was a strong, thoughtful, kind woman, and that caused us to creating such impressive pieces of literature. Being a woman means a war itself, a war from the moment you're born in this world to the moment you say goodbye to your life. And Fallaci, after all, she was a strong, thoughtful, kind woman, and that caused us to creating such impressive pieces of literature. Being a woman means a world of war itself, a war from the moment you're born in this world to the moment you say goodbye to your life. And Fallaci has depicted this scene of war in this book as perspicaciously as possible, and unfortunately she passed away in a September 15, 2006 in Italy. Whereas it seems a fairly difficult task to grasp a summary of such deep and complex task, a very brief one is narrated below for you to have a better sight on the whole story. Well, this is the article that I've written several weeks ago. I've read this book twice and I really liked it, so I try to give you a short summary about it, and then I'll explain some movements, some points, some perspectives that they've been depicted through the whole track of the story. Well, throughout the story, we see that some concepts like love, freedom, patriarchal, annoy, anger, war, wealth, poverty, punishment, revenge, and hundreds of other abstract meanings are depicted. All of them are summarized in the process of a widow's pregnancy to draw her own scene of life. Her conflicts are observable easily. There's a mom here who basically has the right to feel the power of having someone inside her own body and give the person every single cell of herself to grow him up. On the other hand, we have a child who plays the role of a sin or guilt as a result of his parents' disconnected relationship. He doesn't have even the power, the decision actually, for coming or dejecting this life. Therefore, all the weight and responsibility are on the poor, alone mother's shoulders. She tries to explain the law and rule of nature, whereby the circle of all human beings from the very beginning tells and myth in different parts of her monologues, like this one. All impose upon you the same arrogance that was imposed on me, and on my mother, my grandmother, my grandmother's mother, all the way back to the first human born of another human being, whether he liked it or not. Probably, if he or she had been allowed to choose, he would have been frightened or answered no, I don't want to be born. But no one asked their opinion. And so they were born and lived and died after giving birth to another human being who was not asked to choose again. And that one did likewise for millions of years, right down to us. And then the protagonist of the story, the mother, she starts talking to him about his gender and what it's going to be like if he becomes a male or female. Being a male is not easy task at all. You have to always be strong and do what you really want. At least you don't need to change or even hide some parts of your own personality and features about who you really are, since appreciation is a reward of your own efforts and attempts. In addition, no one is going to blame you for having someone in your life or navigates the way that you have to live or obeying so many other rules in your culture. However, being a woman is a million times more complex and difficult, and that is not bad at all. I'm just her conflicts are observable easily. There's a mom here who basically has the right to feel the power of having someone inside her own body and give the person every single cell of herself to grow him up. On the other hand, we have a child who plays the role of a sin or guilt as a result of his parents' disconnected relationship. He doesn't have even the power, the decision actually, for making or rejecting this life. Therefore, all the weight and responsibility are on the poor, alone mother's shoulders. She tries to explain the law and rule of nature whereby the circle of all human beings from the very beginning, tales and myth in different parts of her monologues, like this one. I'll impose upon you the same arrogance that was imposed on me and on my mother, my grandmother, my grandmother's mother, all the way back to the first human born of another human being, whether he liked it or not. Probably if he or she had been allowed to choose, he would have been frightened and answered, no, I don't want to be born. But no one asked their opinion, and so they were born and lived and died after giving birth to another human being who was not asked to choose again. And that one did likewise for millions of years, right down to us. And here she starts talking to him about his gender and what it's going to be like if he becomes a male or female. She tries to draw a picture about his gender and some advantages and disadvantages, some kind of circumstances and situations that he or she actually is going to face. For example, about the way that she has to live, about the way that has to make decisions, about the way that the people will actually look at that person and his or her gender, and it's like trying to draw a picture, and she tries to differentiate these two genders completely. And here she uses a really beautiful monologue, and she talks to the baby and says that if she would be a woman, how it's going to be like. And she says, and yet, or just for this reason, it's so fascinating to be a woman. It's an adventure that takes such courage, a challenge that's never boring. You'll have so many things to engage you if you're born a woman. To begin with, you'll have to struggle to maintain that if God exists, he might even be an old woman with white hair or a beautiful girl. Then you'll have to struggle to explain that it wasn't sin that was born on the day when Eve picked an apple. That was born that day was a splendid virtue called disobedience. And then she turns the conversation completely and she tries to talk with the baby about some abstract concepts like freedom, like love, and other things. And here there's a monologue that says, you're going to hear about freedom a lot. It's like love, intangible, abstract. They're worth talking about. They are things worth talking about. They are things like smell, like air, oxygen. How can you define smell? this is my really question, how can you define smell? As far as you try to define them, you're unable to do it unless you feel, experience, and breathe it. We can't convey the real meaning of love when we're not in love or we've never been loved. So we can talk about freedom when we don't have any precise concept of equality in our minds, we've never experienced it. So how can you define it? How can you experience it? How can you explain it? So we can't talk about freedom. We can't talk about love as long as we don't have any concept of them in our mind. There are some abstract pictures in our minds that they have been defined by our parents and families. So this world is never going to show us freedom or love. You have to find it yourself, as Fallaci said on page 49 in her book, that baby, you're imprisoned in my womb, but in that darkness, you're free. In this huge, cruel world, you'll never be free like this. You see, this is the contradiction that she uses really beautifully. She uses such concepts like darkness and brightness, like freedom and imprisoned in a just small hole in her body. So I guess this is one of the most beautiful definitions that I have ever heard about freedom. Well, another very deep monologue is said when the protagonist of the story talks about love in a way that persuades the reader to have a consideration about all people and feelings deeply. She declares in the 21st page of her book, nothing in the world can threaten a human being's freedom except a very blind slavery named love. Even strings and bars, none of them can force a person to submit someone else. And that's exactly where paradoxical emotions cover the cells of brain, and we lose the real meanings of such concepts like love and freedom. We choose love to be free, although our freedom is in abandonment. That's the routine of life. Human beings have always been looking for something. Devoting all their time and potential to find out a mystery of life. But after the achievement, they feel like the purpose and attractions are all lost. Meanwhile, in the ending stages of the story, the protagonist, who has always been looking for a normal life full of attempts and chances, is not satisfied and interested anymore. When she loses the baby and finds the opportunity to have her job, she wonders this is not really her desire. You see, this is our real nature. All the human beings, we try for something in a long time. We may try for a job, for a person, for anything, for maybe several years, but after achieving it, it's like we lose our enthusiasm and potential, our energy, our love even for that thing. This is really interesting, I guess. Well, another pessimistic point of view drawn by the protagonist is the tales she tells to the baby. There are 3 important stories that she tries to tell for her baby as she is talking to him. One is about a flower called magnolia. It's an unlucky flower that kills women. As soon as they go near it, they become close to it, they smell it, they die. And there's another story about a child who goes in a house, a very huge house, and there's a very beautiful dish full of beautiful chocolates that when the child gets close to it and she eats one of them, she faces very bad insults and humiliations that it actually makes that child to prevent eating from that chocolates over and over. And the third story is about a person and her family that she tries to actually wash dirty clothes, and it's actually a source of her income and salary. So the protagonist of the story just tries to draw some pessimistic pictures and images for the baby. And that's exactly another evidence of the conflict implied previously. Indeed, when we hear the baby's voice in the last pages of the book, he blames the mom about the untold elements of life, those aspects which may be worth being born. In the last parts of the story, it's like the baby tries to talk to the mom, and there are some conversations actually being told by the baby. And here he admits that there are some aspects that they may be worth being born. He admits the mother have also told me about the feeling of having a flower without dying, or eating chocolates without any humiliation, and about the truth of coming a better day and tomorrow. And here, I guess the protagonist of the story is trying to imply to some kind of discriminations and some differences about the different elements and options about different social levels in the society. And after all those struggles, she finally understands that her existence is dependent on that baby. Subsequently, baby's life is also an integral part of her own life. So she accepts that pregnancy is not a really punishment. It's not an accident or haphazard. She finds her pregnancy as a miracle happening spontaneously. How can a man understand a woman who is expecting a child? He can't get pregnant. Is it and here actually she asks herself, she faces this reconsideration that the man's inability this inability is really an advantage or a disadvantage. And up until yesterday, it seemed to me an advantage. She says it, I'm the protagonist of the story. She says that up until yesterday, it seemed to me an advantage, even a privilege. Today, it seems to me a limitation, even an impoverishment. There is something glorious about enclosing another life in your own body, in knowing yourself to be two inside of one. At moments, you're even invaded by a sense of triumph. And in the serenity accompanying that triumph, nothing bothers you, neither the physical pain you'll have to face, nor the work you'll have to sacrifice, nor the freedom you'll have to give up. She says that on the 95th page of her book. Sometimes our life may cause to somebody's death, and others' life may result in our death. That's life. A mother's survival is connected to every single moment of her baby's existence. And here at this spot, there's a whole change on this story. Let me tell you another point in advance. Justice is another element she struggles with time to time. For instance, when she thinks this connection is in the role of her pregnancy has been a contract. She sees her pregnancy as a contract between the mother and the baby. Otherwise, the baby has never been as loyal as she tended to be. That's where she insists on her mission, in regardless of all risks and difficulties. She gets a suggestion from her boss about a very important mission that it can actually promote her job vacancy. So here she tries to actually accept that suggestion of her job. Surprisingly, she finds herself as delighted as she was, since she changes her mind about baby's unfairness. Now the mother appears as a naughty girl. When she changes travelers' shoes and breakfast orders in the hotel, standing and watching them confused. It's like she was playing with her baby. And the sound of her laugh reminds us of a girl wearing a short and red skirt with white socks, running and playing without noticing surroundings. And that makes a really beautiful scene in our mind as a reader. Having a reconsideration about her ignored basic rights actually may cause her that to start enjoying her life again. This sparkle makes us to think logically. And that question comes to our mind, that being pregnant means preferring someone else's life over yours? Does that really mean forgetting who you really were? Hence, that obsession may cause our protagonist to live in an illusionary world, to live with some pictures which they didn't have any similarity to the real picture of baby. She'd rather to see and imagine him in a way that she wanted to. Scientifically, a 3-month fetus merely parallels with a fish more than looking like a human being's body structure. Hypothetically, if she didn't have to have the abortion, she could have had a more realistic imagination. Because when she goes to work after those weeks and she comes back, she loses her baby, and regardless of her tensions and enthusiasm, she had to actually have the abortion imposed on her. And here we see that she collects different pictures and images of baby in different times and periods. This process of following his evolution seems to be her own character's development. Interestingly, the more she finds baby's body organs more distinct, the better her own moods, thoughts, and behaviors compose. Maybe that was the reason of her rejection to have a surgery for eviction. She was unable to accept the ending of her baby. However, after symptoms like fever, infection, and headache, she was forced to have a surgery. It can be interpreted that as long as you live with death in your body, then your spirit is about to infect. That was my own interpretation from that part, that as soon as you leave them, those dead things in your body, in your mind and your spirit, you possibly may observe small traces of freedom. Just try to evict dead fetuses of your life. And Fallaci represents the scene of patriarchal professionally without any direct imply. This scene is observable from the very introductory pages to the ending words. And the climax of this tragic phenomena is the next following days after the abortion in the hospital, who all characters appear next to each other for the first time. The most frustrating period they could ever choose. The father, doctor, and boss are main male characters, persisting on having abortion previously, now pretend to be furious and mournful. These three characters are symbols of billions of male dictators having the permission to make any kind of decision and then hiding just behind a showcase. Patriarchal is all about inequalities and difficulties all women are facing. It's all about the suppression they faced and experienced through long centuries ago. And the other sensitive element appearing here is sympathy. When a very close but opposing side friend of our protagonist decides to talk about her hopeless and disappointed friend, as well as the second doctor, the protagonist's mom is the only character who identifies herself with her daughter wholehearted. Other women apparently did the same thing, even though the result of their speeches and votes in the court were not that delighting. After all, our protagonist may have also been a victim of abortion many years ago, as her mother narrated. You see, this is a kind of circle, and invalid circle, actually. A mother gets pregnant, thinks about abortion, faces a dilemma, happy or sad, makes a decision. No matter what the results would be, no matter what the result would be, a court will be held for her one day, asked by a child, asked by the parents, by partner, husband, or anyone else who has no concept of responsibility of having an alive part of yourself in your womb. One of the most bolded, eye-catching characteristics of Fallaci's majestic way of narration is the way of characters presents. Well, to expand more in details, let's say the protagonist or main character of the entire story remains unnamed continuously. The unnamed woman is not just hers. We can easily generalize her voice to all suppressed women and sacrificed societies all around the world. Those who have been victims of meaningless traditional strict clothes frames, and all the thing accumulated in reader's mind after all is just where does that come from? And the only question is why? The last but not the least, this paper is not about feminism at all. It's all about humanism, about hearts, about lives, about emotions, and things still are worth thinking about. Next time you see a pregnant mom, please try not to judge her. You have no concept of her love and hatred, no imagination of the dilemmas she's passed, and no comprehension of the difficulty of the decision making of giving life or not. And surprisingly, because of some critics' ideas, the protagonist of the story is the author simultaneously. Oriana Fallaci pretends to write this letter to her own child in the frame of this book. And I guess there's no need to have a conclusion. Just let me read the last paragraph of the book for you. But we came to the conclusion that this is magnolia. Pick a flower. I never succeeded in this. You will succeed. Get up on your toes and extend one hand like this. Where are you? You were here. You were holding my arm. You were big. You were a man. And now you are no more. There is nothing but a glass of alcohol in which something floats, something that did not want to be a man or woman, something that I did not help to become a man or woman. You ask me, why should I do this? Why do you have to do this? The end of my child, because there is life. I'm not cold anymore. It means that there is life. I can no longer sleep. I feel life. Look, the light is on. I hear voices. Someone is running, screaming, getting frustrated. But elsewhere, hundreds of thousands of children and mothers are born. Life needs neither me nor you. We're dead. I may die too. But this does not matter, because life does not die.